Welcome back to this episode of Kingdom Kommerce, where we do commerce the kingdom way. I'm one of your hosts, Cooper Peterson, joined by co-host Luke Reichbost, sponsors Scott Moffitt, and Joe Abraham. Today, we are excited to talk about how to implement Bossy, what we learned last episode, in deciding whether to be a solopreneur or to have a partner in your business. So, Joe, let's just say I have a startup and there's a lot of skills I need to learn in order to run a business properly. This is the situation I was in. My major was environmental science. I knew nothing about business, but I knew I wanted to start one. I have been doing this all myself with the help of mentors and advisors, but the question I've asked myself is it worth it to bring on a partner to fill in some of the weaknesses that I have? What would you say to someone starting a business and advice that you would give them to help them decide, is it worth it to bring on a partner or should they go it alone?
Yeah, I'll start and then let's get some of Scott's thoughts on it. You kind of innately know. You know, like I think, again, if you're discerning, if you're praying, if you're getting counsel early, either this is a business that you can kind of get off the ground yourself, or at least get it to a certain point. But in many cases, you'll just sense, I can't even get it off. I need a running buddy, like the ideation, the planning, the strategizing, the brainstorming. I need somebody. I don't like doing it myself, right? So if right away you know that you need somebody to bounce ideas off of, co-create with and all that, that's usually a sign that you may need a co-founder early. But if you're pretty much getting through most of it on your own, you may not need one right away, and then it'll come back to, is it a co-founder later? Is it just a key staff member later? Whatever it may be. Scott, like in the early stages of someone ideating, what's your recommendation typically on co-founder versus go it alone?
It's a great question. I find a lot of the time that people look for a co-founder primarily for financial reasons. They'll look for someone as a potential investor or someone who has access to capital because you need a degree of capital to build anything. This doesn't always need to be as much as some people think, but you need a degree of capital. And so the way that I explain that to people is, look, find someone, if that's the case, that's willing to invest in you or partner with you, but make sure that you clearly delineate what that is, because there's what I call smart money and what I call dumb money, right? And dumb money is, having someone that is investing money and they don't really add value to the business or to the structure of the organization, which and it's not always dumb, but if you clearly articulate and have a mutual understanding of what that role is, that would be, in a wise way, would be kind of a silent partner or an investor, right? So that's one of the main reasons I think that people come along or want to have a co-founder. One of the things that I want to unpack a little bit, and like to get your take on as well, Joe, is you talked about some of the skills, right, that you may not have that you want to have. At what point do you say, okay, these are things that I do want to learn, like I want to get better at, and I feel that if I got better at them, I wouldn't necessarily need that co-founder, right? So I don't want to like stunt someone to say, I need to grow in this area, and so by growing in that area, I might not need a co-founder. Or is it better for me to say, look, I'm really great at this, and if I spend time, really focusing on learning in these other areas, I'm not really fostering what my core strengths are. So I can see an argument on both sides, or a case to be made on both sides of that. How do you balance, in your opinion, that?
I think part of it is the answer to your question is, when should I have a co-founder, and if so, when and why? I would say under the why is the question you have to answer. Why do you need or not need a co-founder? And in listening to Scott talk, I figured out three things, right? Do you need someone to do work in your business? Or do you need someone to give you mind share? Or do you need someone to give you money, right? So he gave us the money example. A lot of times as college students, college students, it's not so much I'm finding a co-founder for money. It's I'm either finding a co-founder because there's work to be done and I can't pay them, so I'm going to offer them equity, or it's mind share, like I need a thought partner. the product is incomplete without somebody else. The service is incomplete without them. I can't just hire the work. This person brings to the table a somewhat equal part to the innovation and execution of the business plan, right? So for example, we all bought these crossed chains last night, right? Crown chains. That organization is now led by kind of two co-founders who are consider themselves co-CEOs in the business. I think if we were to interview them, we'd find that they just didn't need a worker with them. They needed a mind share partner. Something about that other person complemented them that kind of made it complete. So if you feel you're missing mind share, you need a co-founder. If you're just missing people to get work done, those are workers that we hire or figure out how to compensate them however way we can. Or in some cases, you just need someone to write a check. And that's that financial, hopefully silent equity partner who gives you cash to get that done. So those would be the three reasons you'd end up with in that decision-making process. And I would say a mind share person is worth equity partner. An investor is worth equity partner. Someone just to do work in your business, that's where I have a lot of entrepreneurs in a lot of regret going, I gave up 20%, 30% to my college roommate or my three best friends, and I kept pushing in year 2 and year 3, and they're like nowhere to be seen because they weren't passionate about it. They were there at the right place at the right time. It's a story of Meta, Facebook. If you go watch the original movie that was done about them, one founder and 3 guys who happened to be in the dorm room when he had his aha moment. They all got equity, and then it was a bloodbath later to buy them out and lawsuits and all that because one guy stayed the course to build Facebook and the others kind of tagged along. And there was a lot of resentment and a lot of frustration between buddies and roommates over partnership.
I think some of it also it can be the intimidation factor of going at it alone, right? So I think sometimes people will paint a picture that they need a co-founder because they don't know what they don't know. And so they replace maybe a mentor with a co-founder and who maybe might not even be as passionate about the business or into it for the long run, but because they feel the comfort of I'm not in this alone, I have someone that's going to go through this with me. And then there's times where that person just doesn't step up, when they're needed because their objectives going into it
they just wanted to support you, and you're like, oh, you're going to give me 30% or I'm not going to say no.
Right.
But they're passionate.
They don't share the same passion, right? So I think communication is critical. If you're at all considering a co-founder or a partner, is a communication. Like, are they in line? Do they fit with the BOSI system? And do they complement me well? Do they share the same passion? Are they going to be with me through the thick and the thin? Is this what their desire is to build? Do we share that same type of vision? Is really important, I think, to understand.
For our audience, who many of them are probably aspiring entrepreneurs or young entrepreneurs, should they view a partnership as only as a necessity, as a last resort?
I would.
Okay.
Based on all the data I've seen and all the advisory sessions I've been on with partners who no longer see things the way each other do, partnership should be entered into very, very carefully. It's like marriage. God's going to use your marriage, your kids, and your business to sanctify you. So when you go into entrepreneurship and then you get married and then you have kids, it's like the perfect storm. It's like you're done. So the partnership in business is just as important, I think, not in a biblical way, but in many ways, as a partnership in marriage.
Oh, it is a marriage.
Right, it is. And so to that end, when I'm a college student and my college roommate and I decide to embark on a partnership together, we have to have some serious conversations up front. What does this mean? And what if one of us decides we're not as engaged in the business? How is it going to work? How will one of us exit gracefully and not hurt the business and cause complication? Have those conversations early, because 9 out of 10 times, those two co-founders aren't going to be equally pulling on the yoke 5 years from now.
And you identified me properly as the builder, and as the builder, I feel like there's probably a synergy, and you might hopefully will validate this, but there's probably a synergy of being an optimist generally, because you find a way. There's a way. I found it. I've identified it, and then you almost tunnel vision. Like it's that same way of sometimes you can lack a little bit of empathy or patience, because it's like, no, this is clearly the path. Here's why, and here's why we need to go this way. So I will say that's a challenge, a necessary thing to do, difficult to do, because when you're building something and it's early, you want to be as positive as you can about something, but having those conversations early of, what happens if a year, 2 years from now, you don't want to be a part of this?
Or you get married, or you find a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you move to a different state, or you get recruited for a job somewhere else. What's going to happen to our business partnership? Can I buy you out? Can you buy me out? Let's put that in writing up front so that we have clarity and our personal relationship is protected. Now, we're kind of giving you like the darker side of it, because we've sat through so many meetings with partnerships that blew up, but there's a beautiful side to it as well. God could have placed that perfect person in your life as a college roommate, as a coworker at work, as a person at church, with all those right giftings, all the right calling. They complement you well, so you have to be looking for that as well. And sometimes it's like simpatico, like my current business partner and I, when like we got put together in the most random way, but like we're a perfect fit for each other. Like even though he drives me nuts sometimes and I drive him nuts, like that was a God thing.
It's like a marriage.
It was a God thing. Like we've never had an argument. We've never fought. We've never battled in like 4 years now, because there's just this respect we have for each other's lanes. Even though he was a partner at a major consulting firm, and he's built and sold companies of his own. Technically, we should be butting heads every 3 minutes, but it was of God.
And I'll give you a great example, a real life example. So with my company, Ideal Strategic Partners, the head of our advisory board, his name's Ken May, amazing man. He was one of the original founding management employees for Nextel. You guys probably don't know what Nextel is.
Those are such good phones.
Yeah, I know you could drop them from the Empire State Building.
Well, they had two-way walkie-talkies on your phone.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And they sold to Sprint, and it was a really large exit. And then Ken went on to become an entrepreneur, and that's what I'm going to talk about in a minute. Then he went on to be with Qualcomm, one of the top guys, and working with Erwin Jacobs there. And so a lot of wisdom. And he has told this story about how he had an equal partner in a business. And it's synergistic to what you were saying. So they literally work different schedules. So Ken would come in at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. He'd work until 3, 4 in the afternoon. His partner would come in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and work until 10 o'clock at night. And Ken was on kind of the business development end of things, and he would handle that. And then his partner was on the operation side. But they just knew they had an accountability. This is what I'm responsible for. They clearly articulated what their responsibilities, what they were to be accountable for. And he said they had never had any issues with their partnership whatsoever in doing that.
I've never heard of that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, and they had that great relationship. I think one of the bigger challenges, and not to go back to the dark side, but one of the bigger challenges is that there's always, or at least in my experience, just talking to others and people who have had partnerships, equal partnerships, there's always points in time where one partner feels that they're doing more, or the other's doing more, or there's something that's unequally yoked, and whether it's valid or invalid, that it's just a feeling, and that will come at certain points, and sometimes it'll be like a teeter-tot, and it'll go one way or the other, right? And so I just feel that's one thing that, again, communicating up front, having those difficult conversations early, even when you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and you're excited and things are starting to fall into place, and you don't. It's not natural to want to talk about doomsday at that point. You're thinking about or at least for me, it's not natural to talk about that. I'm thinking about how do we move the ball from the 5 to the 10-yard line, and then to the 20, and then 20, and then 30. Right? That's the B in me, right? But to pause and say, okay, I know this isn't what we want, but if this happens, it's almost like, why do you put together, a will? Why do you put that together? Because you just never know what can happen, right?
So yeah, Luke, as you're listening to this, what question comes to mind? Because how we're talking about partnership here. We're saying I have a choice. I can just be my own solopreneur, or I could bring in a co-founder. Does it surprise you that as soon as I do invite a co-founder or a partner or 3 or 4 co-founders in, I'm inviting God to bless that business, but I'm also giving Satan lots of new ammo to divide, to conquer, and yeah.
I have a lot of questions, but we're going to be getting into those right after this coming break, guys. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you so much, Joe, for setting us up for that great, amazing cutoff this break. Right now, we're going to be diving into, as a Christian, what makes like a good partner? What should I be looking for, and how do I do that and set myself up, if I am looking for a partner, to be a great role model for Christ, and what do I need to look for in them as well?
Yeah, so at a very practical level, let's look at spiritual gifting, balance, right? We don't need 2 administratively gifted leaders in a business. We don't need 2 people who are like charismatic front of room people, right? So you're hopefully looking for someone who complements you. Same thing with your entrepreneurial DNA. You've discovered your DNA. Are there some things you're looking to complement in another partner? But purely from a Christ follower perspective, I'd have you think about, how will I and how can I be Christ to my partner? Because let's say in this case, you, Cooper, who was the original idea generator, right? It's your baby. If you're going to invite a co-founder in, there's an easy tendency to go, I'm bringing them in to help me. I'm bringing them in to move my product forward. And God may have you say, well, that's kind of not how Jesus would approach it. He'd be like, I'm bringing someone in so I can be Christ to them in this business, right? So that may be a good litmus test to say, am I really going to bring a co-founder in? If I am, that's what you're going to give an account to God for, is how you served your partner with your strengths.
And I'll piggyback that just a little bit. So, and I think this actually will set up for our next episode well also, is that the timing of bringing in a co-founder, and also the variety of different ways and structures you can bring in a co-founder. So I think that a lot of what we've talked about co-founder related up to this point is equal partner, right? It doesn't need to be equal partner, right?
Ideally not.
Yeah, ideally not. And we can talk about that more. But I tell this to prospective partners that are applicants in our company all the time. I say, look, the further that you can move the ball, the further that you can take it, before bringing in any equity partners, any investment, any co-founders giving the equity, the more value you're going to get, or the less of the business you will have to give away, because you've been able to articulate. It's like if I were to say, Joe, let's go to the Bahamas in April, and stay for a week. The chances of you giving me a firm yes right now, I wouldn't consider to be very high, because you don't know when in April I'm talking about. None of the details are planned out. Now, if I say, Joe, look, I've got us a boat chartered that's going to be leaving the port of Miami. We're leaving on April 7th. We're going to be there 5 days. I've already got the VRBO booked. We're going to be back on the 12th. What do you say? Now, if you like me, and you're free, you're available, then there's a lot better of a chance that I'm going to get a yes from you then. So I think that the further and the more you're able to kind of wash out some of those early details, and get some of that direct path and be able to show the value, the more value your equity is going to have. So at an idea concept level, it's like, hey, let's go. Well, 50-50, we're equally in this, and let's figure out what we have. As you put more and more work, that's sweat equity that really should give you more value, or when it comes to negotiating, because they're buying into something that they can already see a path for. It's not, hey, let's figure out this path together.
You're joining somebody.
Yeah, you're coming alongside something that's already kind of been, even if it's just the foundational level, there's something, there's not nothing, right?
All right. What's your next question, Luke?
I'm actually going to hand it off to Cooper for a question, because
Okay.
I need some time to process and think. That's a lot to unpack personally.
Cool.
So let's just say you have financial resources and you need expertise in a certain area. The best thing to do is just to buy it.
Pay for it in cash.
Just to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine you're a budding entrepreneur and you don't have a lot of financial resources. To me, this seems like you could either try to get an investor with equity, or you just try to learn everything and do it all yourself.
Or you just go give the equity directly to the worker. right?
Or to the worker.
But the structure of that, and I think Scott would be right on board to say that, would be, you know how we said, do I need this person to do work? Do I need this person to be mind share? You know, like,
Right.
or do I just need money, right? So let's put the money aside and say, in some cases, I just need help, but I can't afford to pay $15 an hour, $20 an hour, $30 an hour.
Right.
So what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
I could spend the next 6 months trying to raise money to then go hire the people, but I need to hire them yesterday. You could still do an equity deal with them with a predetermined buyback, so that they're not going to be your equity partners for the next 25 years. They may be your equity partners for the next 18 months. So you're saying, look, I'm going to give you a 20% stake in the business as long as you're with me. So basically every month that I can't pay you, I'm going to give you 20 shares. So as long as you're producing, you're getting your shares. But at any point, I have the first right to buy those shares back. And so that way in the future, either through revenue or through investors, you're buying them back, getting your equity back. They're getting a nice return because your shares that were worth like a nickel, hopefully in 18 months are worth a little bit more. So they could have gotten $15 an hour, but a year and a half from now, they could do the math. I made 45. I made $85 an hour based on my buyout. But it was predetermined that you're going to buy them out.
I think also when it comes to the equity conversation, the reason I always see some value in it when it's smart money and someone that can really help move the ball is I'm a big proponent of aligning the interests. You know, I don't want, you know, there's a saying that there's some people that are terrified not knowing what they're going to make every day. I'm terrified knowing what I'm going to make every day. And I think that's how most entrepreneurs are wired. It's like, if I wake up and I go and I work my butt off and I do everything that I can that day, I deserve to make more that day than a day that I might show up for a half a day. And so that's kind of, I think, it's the way that entrepreneurs generally are wired a little bit differently is, you know, I want the fruits of my labor to be reflective of what I'm doing and the amount of work I'm doing. And so when I think of equity, I think of this as a way to incentivize them. Look, if we build this and we build this in a way where the equity has value, they're incentivized and motivated not by a paycheck they're going to get at the end of the week, but by the value of the shares that they're going to have because of the growth in those and the value.
And if you guys have watched Shark Tank, you'll see sometimes how the investor class themselves will say, look, I don't want equity in your business. I just want $1 per unit sold, royalty, right? So you can even negotiate something like that with your worker and say, look, I can't pay you now, but every month that you give me 20 hours, it's worth X to me. And for every unit sold, I'm going to pay you $1 or 50 cents. So they know that every unit sold is getting them paid back. There's, again, you have to put a little bit of upside in it for them. But now you're not trading any equity. You're just trading deferred payments for a higher payout. And then you'd be like, okay, well, you may or may not sell your business for 20 years, but you're going to be making revenue in 30. So, yeah, I'll take a little piece of every unit sold till I've been paid back. That would be another way to structure it.
And if you have a key person, like someone who, let's say, is really, I mean, your business is there's going to be a huge part of it. You know, like it's someone that you need to have around for one reason or another. Maybe they have a tremendous amount of industry experience or contacts, and you really want them to have that vested interest, but you want to make sure that they're going to stay engaged in it. You could even do something where you set up a vesting schedule, right? So as you attain certain milestones, or if you do future capital raises, like those unlock levels of equity, so you're incentivizing them to continue to stay involved and move the ball because it directly impacts what their bottom line is with the company too.
So let's go to your next question, but let me wrap this one up with the principle behind it is, if I give you all the equity up front, am I potentially making a mistake because now I have no control? Is it better for me to just piecemeal it to you based on your performance, or not even do equity but structure something else where you're still well compensated for what you're going to bring to my business without making equity the thing along the way? So that would be the guiding principle under which you would structure whatever makes sense for you. What's your next question?
Yeah, let's bring bossy into this a little bit. Let's just say you're at that point where you decide that you need to bring somebody on as a business partner. How can you use bossy to choose the best partner?
Well, let me ask you before you answer the question. Clarify that. Why do you need to bring a business partner on? Do you need to bring?
But he's saying the decision's been made. He's been through our checklists. He's
But is
discerned.
it for the work? Is it for the mind, or is it for? Because I think
in this case he's saying all the boxes have checked, and this is the right co-founder. God's brought him correct.
Okay.
I just sense
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
that this
Made the
found
decision.
this
You
is
need
somebody.
this
Yeah.
either for the money or
Okay.
the mind or what have you.
Whatever it may be, it's all lined up. We've agreed. We've had the tough discussions. We're willing to put stuff in writing. Now, what am I looking for in them, right? So back to, I would say spiritual gifts are more important than bossy.
Okay.
It's kind of, what are their spiritual gifts? What are mine? What's their bossy profile? What's mine? And you're ideally looking for complementary or opposites, right? So if you're a builder, you don't need another builder. Right. So that should be a red flag if they're showing strong builder tendencies. Or if they're an innovator, another innovator is going to be a red flag. But cross quadrant is great. Or if you look at the bossy quadrant, the BOSI, upper teaming up with lower is great. Left teaming up with right is great. Cross teaming up with cross is great. Across this way. So those are just some general rules to say we won't end up stepping on each other's toes if we are, in a sense, opposites of each other, and we'll think differently and bring that difference to the table in what we do.
Do you think that there's a way that you can actually be too different to where you have trouble relating to or
The
understanding
decision making? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if he's a builder and he teams up with an innovator, they are going to see the world completely different. How people get paid, they're going to think very differently about. How the product is priced, they're going to think very differently of. Where money is invested, the innovator is going to want to put it into product development, research, hire more developers, hire more programmers, hire more people. And the builder is going to be like, I need to hire more salespeople and do heavy commission. So yeah, there will be those things. But again, if you've discerned that this is the person God's brought in your life, there's probably a good reason for that balance to be happening, for those negotiations to be taking place, and for you guys to submit to each other and to the Lord to say, yeah, we're opposites, but we're, like, for example, one of my heroes in life is Earl Seals, right? He's a guy I'd do anything on the planet for. So Earl and his partner, complete opposites, like falling off the corner of the quadrant opposites. But God's used them to build a mega empire, right? How did that happen? Do they see? I don't think they see eye to eye on anything. Honestly, on a business perspective, they don't. But there's that submission to the Lord and that, like, I don't know it all. So I will, in these areas, I will submit to you. And in these areas, I will submit to you. So I think the way Earl and Dwayne did it was Earl said, on all things outside sales, Salesforce, building the team, leading, hiring, I'm the guy. And Dwayne's kind of second to him. All things internal, operations, payroll, scale, all that is Dwayne. And Earl's like, whatever you say.
So
And that works
essentially,
beautifully.
you're dividing up your skills based on your spiritual gifts and who you are as an entrepreneur.
and submitting.
And the submission piece is big, because that's hard, because that's where Satan's going to come in going, why? Dude, look at your resume. You have better grades than so-and-so. You know more. Or you have better... Like, Satan's going to look to divide. And the moment of like, yeah, but I know his idea is really dumb, but I still have to submit. My job, I'll protect on the back end. I'll come up with plan Bs. I'll do whatever I have to do. But
You make it sound
I have to
so
submit.
easy, Joe.
Man, I'm right now, like Matt, if my business partner ever here, he'd be like, yeah, that a lot of times I can tell Joe disagrees with me, but he's like, yeah, let's do it. Because I'm showing my respect for him. And even though it's not the perfect idea, he's my partner. God's gifted him differently than me, so I got to submit.
So if you're someone who's looking to start out, or you're in those beginning steps in the audience here, even for ourselves, and you're looking at different industries like products, direct to consumer in that case, maybe business to business, or more of a service industry, would you say there's one where you need to be more worried about co-founders and like one tendency or whatever than the other? How do you view that, even then, coming from the Christian perspective, being in these different opportunities? Because coming from service, if you're able to do it yourself, you can do it yourself. Product, you need to have a lot more capital, depending on what it is, to get something started up.
That's a good question. As you were asking it, nothing popped to mind of, oh yeah, service is so different, so you really need a co-founder, but product you don't. Because the big trap a lot of service businesses fall in, just like you said, I can do it myself. The problem is, you go provide the service. Who's doing the sales? Who's doing the marketing? You're busy serving the customer. And that's why a lot of these service businesses plateau as solopreneurs, because you can only go so far as how many hours you have to serve your customers to collect the money. So, but if you're doing the delivery, a bunch of stuff's falling out the back end. And that's probably where you needed the co-founder or the partner or those key employees who can go do the things you can't do because you're doing the service. So I think it's, unless you think of something, Scott, it's agnostic.
I didn't,
right?
but the question brought up one final one that I want to get your take on, Joe, is if co-founder, do you believe it's imperative that they align with your faith?
Spiritual?
Yeah, with your faith.
I've done it both ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you're
good
look,
answer.
if you're going
Very
to go
straightforward.
into this as a Christ-led entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and you're going to be willing to submit, and you're going to be under the authority of God, and they don't even have that view of life, it's not equal. Because their worldview is different than yours, and there's nothing to bring you guys together or gals together to agree. Their mechanism for decisions is here, yours is here, and you're always doing this. So having done it both ways, it's a lot easier to be in a partnership with a Christ follower, because ultimately, if we have a conflict and the conflict is something we can't resolve and it's really getting bad, both of us would be willing to go sit down with a pastor. Both of us would be willing to go sit down with a mentor or a small group leader. But if he's a non-believer and I'm a believer, he's going to be like, well, I'm going to talk to your stupid pastor. I'll go talk to a lawyer, right? And now we're talking to lawyers, and that's not pleasant.
Yeah. Hate to end the podcast on lawyer topic, but
Well, lawyers
No,
are
that's-
awesome. You just want to
Yeah.
use them against your competition, not
yeah,
against your partner.
not exactly.
Well,
No,
thank you
great,
so
great
much,
meeting.
guys. This has been a fantastic time talking about co-founders, me, a solopreneur. I know I've been super encouraged, and I believe Cooper has been as well.
Absolutely.
But would you mind praying us out again once more, Cooper?
Lord, we thank you for the blessings you've given us and the opportunities you've given us and the wisdom that you've given us. Lord, help us to be good stewards. Help us to give you glory in our business. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. One last thing before we go, as Cooper was praying, I just thought that the community aspect that we're going to be releasing, other believers, other Christ followers, other people in different quadrants, other people with same passions, connecting potential co-founders.
Maybe we hook
connectors,
up the Bossy
team.
assessment. Everyone takes it and can see each other's profiles and
Ooh,
match each other
absolutely.
that way for
Something
conversation.
else for the community
Stay
platform.
tuned, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.